Speaking of Hollywood, go right to the phone line here. And Dave Zumpano. You like that, Dave?
Hollywood, huh?
You're a star. Come on. Dave.
Don't demote me like that.
All right. I like that. You like being a Central New Yorker right here. All right. Dave Zumpano.
Yeah.
Local.
Good morning, gents.
Good morning. Good morning. And Happy New Year, I guess. We can still say that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the strangest thing. Like, your parents always tell you this. We become our parents. Those funny commercials. But the first day of the month comes, and next thing you know, it's the 30th day of the month. That's like a next day. That's the craziest thing.
That's Dave. Literally, it's so funny you said. I was thinking about that this morning. How fast and but trying to relate to how my son equates, time and how you look at it as you get older, and it really does seem like they're, the days, the weeks. It's just like swiftly moving by.
Yeah. Well, that's why everybody's always chasing time. So we got a little more time this year because we got an extra day on February 29th.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
We got to figure out what we're going to do for that extra day.
Go play the lottery.
Yeah. play the numbers. And we're getting more time or more sunlight here each and every day.
Yeah,
but
that helps.
Dave, what do we need to know? What should we be planning with this whole extra day we have here?
I've been talking to a lot of people, and sometimes I think it's time to go back to basics in a sense. Because, there's so many different languages out there, and the way people talk, like financial advisors, bankers, they want to help you do estate planning, and CPAs, estate planning, and they can't, right? So why do I say that? Bankers, financial advisors, they can't do estate planning. They could do your financial planning related to your estate. CPAs can do estate tax planning, but again, not estate planning. So people go, well, what does all that mean? What is estate planning? So estate planning is actually the creation of legal documents that help shift authority or direct others in your absence, right? Now, it could be in your mental absence, your physical absence. But again, it's documents that help identify. When you're not here, when your voice isn't here to say what you want, these documents will say what you would want. And that starts with if you become incapacitated. So that's why we have powers of attorneys and healthcare proxies. Healthcare proxy, what would you want? What healthcare decisions would you want if you weren't able to make them? Power of attorney, what legal and financial decisions would you want if you weren't able to express it? A will, what would you want with all of your things, your assets? What do you want to have with them when you're not here to give them away? So really, they're legal documents. That's really important to understand. Financial, obviously, is a big part of your estate plan. The financial part is a part of your estate plan. It's, all right, how do we get the money to the people we want or our house or the other things we own? Taxes is a big part of estate planning in the sense that, okay, income taxes, estate taxes, things of that nature, retirement accounts, how are those taxed versus my house, all these different things. So they all play a part. CPAs, financial advisors, bankers, they all kind of play a little piece and part. They have their role, tax, financial, but estate is legal. So that's a kind of a big macro.
Wait, Dave, yeah. Dave, before you go any further, what out of all the things you kind of laid out there, what's the most complicated phase or part of estate planning that like there's I guess I'll ask you, what's the easiest part to deal with and what's the hardest part that people struggle with the most?
Yeah, that's a really good question in this sense. To me, the easiest part is the financial planning. Why? If you trust your competent financial professionals, they do that for you, right? Right. So they give you advice, and you direct them. Do you want to be conservative? Do you want to be a little more aggressive? And I don't mean by in the sense it's easy what they do. I'm saying it's easy for me because they do it for me, right? Now, some people do it themselves. I think that's complicated because to me people say to me all the time, hey, don't you do financial stuff? I'm like, no, I got great people for that, right. So the same thing with taxes, right? Tax is very complex. You get a good estate planner. Estate planning is complex too. And the day-to-day, though, I would say the thing that has estate planning has all these backup rules because the government has all these laws that says, okay, if you're incapacitated, if you're in a hospital and a health care decision needs to be made, and you have not done your estate planning, then there's all kinds of rules set up for what's going to happen. The government basically says what's going to happen. That's not true of financial planning and tax planning. If you don't do it, it's not done.
Right.
And so I don't know if that makes things harder or easier. I think the difficult part is, do you like what the government's going to say is going to happen? That's probably the most important part that I hear from most people, is they don't want that. They don't want those default rules that are in place. They want to set their own rules.
Right.
So, but Dave, I think just as the way, you started off, and kind of to Rocco's question, a lot of times I think we get overwhelmed, or we feel like we're too late to the race, right? So it's almost going, as you mentioned, back to the basics. And sometimes, you see, maybe it's planning for dummies or whatever it might be, but you might feel like that, like, wow, I don't even know where to start, right? Some people might feel like that. And then once they just have some of the easy tools or the basic guidance, they're off and running. And I'm sure that a lot of them know exactly what they want to do. They just don't know where to start, right?
Well, Jay, it's a funny comment, because people always say, when should I get this done? You said, when is it too late? Mm-hmm. And I always say, get to me at least 30 days before your heart attack, stroke, or death, and we'll be all set. We can get it done for you, right? And obviously the joke in there is no one knows when that's going to happen.
Right.
Let's talk about it. What is it? There's 4 levels of planning. The basic level is what I call basic planning. You got to get your essential documents in place: your will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney. And we've talked a lot about what those 3 things do. Power of attorney authorizes someone else to do legal and financial decisions on your behalf. Power of attorney authorizes someone to make healthcare decisions on your behalf. A will directs your assets to the beneficiaries. You want to receive them after your death. The next level of planning is, it's like this higher level of the basic estate planning, is people want to avoid probate. Because when you have a will, you got to go through the probate court. It's a legal process. It's costly. So people say, I want a revocable living trust. And a revocable living trust is the first sense where you can start to put your rules into place. So it's a trust that sets up, it owns your assets, and it directs the trustee what to do without having to use the government's rules, without having to go to courts and things of that nature.
So you get some of that set in motion, in a sense, right?
Well, yeah. Well, what you do is you shift the control away from the courts and probate processes and legal proceedings, and you shift it back to people. So you name a trustee, and that trustee does what you've said in the document. And he or she doesn't have to go through any court to do it.
The sorting out of what your assets.
Implementing what you wanted, right? So if I want my house to go to my kids, I want my bank account to go to cousin Charlie, whatever, my car to so-and-so, the trustee can do that pursuant to the instructions in the trust document, rather than having to rely on the courts and legal proceedings. That's why people like it so much.
We should point out
it
that
keeps control in the family.
We should point out that with a revocable trust, that doesn't save anything if you were to go into a nursing home and make an application for Medicaid, because some people are under the misimpression that a revocable trust will protect their assets from if they go into a nursing home, and that doesn't. So we just point that out.
Well, Mark, that's step 2, exactly where I'm going next, right? So level 1 is basic, essential documents: will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney. For those that want to step up a notch, you go to revocable living trust. What's the second level of estate planning? Asset protection. Okay. What does that mean? Well, I have an asset. Can I get sued? Can people take it from me? General rule: if you can access it, so can creditors and predators. So that second level of planning, it says, do I want to protect my assets? And the first question is, if it's yes, then the question I have the attorney says, all right, when? Do you want to do it while you're alive or after you're gone? If you want to do it after you're gone, you could do it in your will or your trust, and you set up a trust for your beneficiaries so they receive the assets in a trust that they can access and use whenever they want, but no one else can. So that's asset protection. The third level is long-term care planning protection, because asset protection rules are one level of complexity. Long-term care planning protection is the third level of planning. So it's, okay, if I do asset protection, does that save from the nursing home? Generally speaking, asset protection does protect against nursing home expenses, but it doesn't assure payment. What does that mean? Well, Medicaid is a government program that will pay for nursing home care, but it has rules. And to qualify for Medicaid, those rules are more complex. So going back to Rocco's original question, what's easy and what's complex? Those rules add another level of complexity on top of typical asset protection planning. Now, the good news is, and I go back to Jay's comment, it's never too late. We get people who go in the nursing home today, we're still able to save 80 and sometimes 100% of their assets, even the day after they go in. There's a lot of complexity, but that comes down now to the lawyer and their ability to work through that complexity and apply it to your individual fact patterns.
Yeah, and you have it worked out before, Dave, which I think, again,
right. It's way easier to do it when you're doing it. I always say when you're on the field, when the referee's on the field, it's a lot easier to manage the game. Yeah. When you, the referee, are out of the game, it gets a little dicey, right? And again, I'm going to go to the fourth level, and then we can take questions, from this group or anywhere else. So 1, that basic stuff. 2, asset protection. 3, long-term care, Medicaid eligibility. 4, estate tax planning. So now that's the most complex level. When people amass enough assets to have a taxable estate, everybody wants to avoid estate tax because after paying all your taxes during life, if you still happen to accumulate too much money, the government takes 40% of it. And then New York, that's federal, New York State will take another 16%. So people want to avoid that potential 56%. Now you add retirement accounts that are still untaxed. So if you have a 401k or an IRA, there's still an income tax due on that. And if you owe an estate tax, you got income tax, estate tax at the federal level and state level. 76 cents of every dollar can go in taxes if you die with a taxable estate. So again, the complexity around there is the most extensive level of planning. And the trick is most people don't need that. You need, right now the estate tax limit is $13.6 million. You can double that if you're married. Now again, that will be dropping significantly the end of next year, down to about 7 or 8, about 7.5 million, we estimate around that time. Still a lot of money, so not a lot of people have to worry about that. A lot of people do have to worry about long-term care costs. That's very prevalent in society today. And again, as we know, here's another interesting thing I do want to talk about. We know that we can plan for, Medicaid paying for your care in a nursing home. And there's all these look-back periods and waiting periods. And just so you know, if we plan today, it doesn't mean you have to wait 60 months. 60 months is just a period of time they could look back at your financial records. Now, there's another Medicaid program that pays for long-term care in your home. In other words, caregivers that come into your home and take care of your loved one. That's called community Medicaid. That doesn't have any look-back periods. Virtually, we can get anyone qualified for that by the 1st of the next month. So today's December or January 23rd or 4th. Technically, if someone came in the office today, we could probably have them qualified for February 1st. The government, a couple years ago, the state of New York, proposed some massive changes to that to put some look-back periods. They ultimately did it and then reversed it. But there's conversation now today they want to, again, implement look-backs. So if people are thinking about, okay, it'd be good to get mom and dad a couple hours of care in the home, now is not the time to delay, because now's the time to get it. Because even if we get a couple hours a day for mom or dad now, they're in the system and the new rules wouldn't apply to them. Now, I'm not saying there are new rules yet. I'm saying they've identified it as a priority to get those new rules implemented this year. Obviously, when we hear about it, we'll let you know exactly when it's happening, but you don't want to sit on your hands on this anymore. Yeah, well, and Dave,
and Dave, that's going to be that's a great lead into our conversation. In the next hour, we're going to talk to someone from the Resource Center for Independent Living and this nurse navigation program that they have. And when you do apply or you're accepted for some of that care, they're going to talk about the level of care, the type of care that you're able to be provided. So that's going to be an interesting.
Well, I got to tell you. I've been doing about 15 years this community Medicaid, and it's wonderful for families. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a lot of work for one particular family member, the one managing it, no question. I make that very upfront with the families that, this isn't a cakewalk. There's legal responsibilities, and there's a lot of work involved. But it's worth it. It's worth it because, your loved ones get to stay home. More importantly, they're safe. They're eating healthily. Like most people, as they get older and they're at home, they start to deteriorate because they don't drink and eat. They get dehydrated and malnutritious. That affects their mental capacity. So when you start to see your loved ones, you think they're getting dementia, many, many times it's not dementia, it's dehydration or malnutrition because they're forgetting to eat and they're not hungry. And just getting someone in the house daily to make sure they're getting their fluids and they're getting their meals, even if they're eating and drinking ensures, makes a big difference in their mental health and everything else.
Dave, Elaine has a question for you. She's listening, and if not sure if you can answer this, but she'd like to know if someone owns a house and they're getting enhanced star, if that person adds their adult daughter to the deed, does the enhanced star still apply?
Generally, if the elder is on it, it should be okay. It's not 100%. I'm pretty certain around that. Maybe Mark knows different.
They won't.
The thing I would say is
they don't.
I'm not sure they need to add the daughter's name. There's much better ways to do that. You can do a transfer on death deed, so it doesn't transfer till death, things of that nature. So there's other ways to do it if it did. But Mark, I don't know. Do you know anything different about that?
If you have a person who doesn't qualify as a co-owner, then they lose that enhanced star exemption. The only way to continue to get it is if you transfer it to the daughter, but you kept the right to live there or kept life use of it. Then you would continue to get the star exemption, and then upon your death, it would go to your daughter. But if you put both names on as co-owners, you'll lose it.
Gotcha. So there's the answer.
Yeah. Dave, and I guess one final question, and we talked about the basics, and I'm sure, it does vary, but if someone were to start, this basic plan, roughly cost, where do you start to?
Love that. So a couple things. I just looked at a study. Will, healthcare proxy, powers of attorney for a single person is somewhere, depending upon law office, somewhere between $500 and $1,000, generally speaking. Married people can be between, most of the studies showed between $800 and $1,600. And then if you get into trust, those generally could be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 for revocable trust. Irrevocable trust generally can be in the $5,000 to $10,000 range, depending upon the number of trusts you're doing and the type of trust you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And again, I know you have those workshops, and any questions that folks have, you'll answer them even outside of those workshops. So,
well, that's what the workshops are, to stay educated and give them practical application to each of these things we talk about.
Yeah, what applies to their situation, their life, and what they need. So, Dave, how do we find out more? EPLawcenter.com. We got weekly workshops, and I tell you, our next 3 are sold out, so get listed on those, or call the office, 315-793-3622. Yeah, and
we're always here for you.
Yeah, a lot of information on the site. You have the online documents, the workshops, and services, blogs, all kind of information up there to get you started in the right direction. So, Dave Zumpano from the Estate Planning Law Center. Dave, be good. We'll see you.
Have a great day, gentlemen.
All right, we'll be looking for your star on the Walk of Fame. All right, we should do that. That'd be great in Utica. What do you think? I think that we should do
Sounds good.
All right, Dave. There you go. All right. Mark, we'll get you.
They should have used ARPA funding for that.
There you go.
Stars along Genesee.
Yeah, stars in front of the Stanley. Stars in front of the Stanley.
There you go.
Wow. I don't know.
Marks would be the biggest.
Soak that in. Yeah, here you go. Stick with us.